All right, we should go and go to lunch again. For 3 minutes. I can check you out when I get up. I will.
That's perfect. Yeah, that'll. I'll just parrot that out, don't worry.
Hello and welcome. I acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of the country we are meeting on today. I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waters and thank them for protecting the coastline and its ecosystem since time immemorial. I pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people with us today. I also acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander sovereignty was never ceded, and this continent always was and always will be Aboriginal land. In finishing, and on a personal view, I fully support the Uluru Statement from the Heart for an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to be enshrined in the Australia's Constitution. We'll begin today's session with a video about the Dive-In Festival from Inclusion at Lloyd's. Thank you.
Doing a video.
One simple instruction. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, we're on again.
Right. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Marcus Pearson. I'm here to welcome you all today. Thank you for joining us today in person and online. The Dive-In is an annual global festival in the insurance sector to support the development of inclusive workplace cultures. This is the 8th year where Marsh and AIG and DXC Technology have hosted an event for Dive-In. The theme for the festival today is Unlocking Innovation, the Power of Inclusion. And we invite our audience here today and online to take action to build an innovative workplace, which can be achieved through the power of inclusion. The topic for our event today is what you don't see. Psychological safety and inclusive workplaces are cornerstones to fostering a culture of innovation. But what you don't see is often what's holding our colleagues back from reaching their potential. The facilitator today for our session is Jillian Hamilton, founder of Managed Damage Group, an expert and leader in non-financial risk with over 2 decades of experience in strategic risk advisory. Jillian lends her expertise to governments, businesses and leaders globally and is engaged with independent reviews on WHS due diligence, workers' compensation, M&A, high-level incidents, and all things risk. It's quite broad. Today, Jillian will be our host and really dive into the topic of what you don't see. Please welcome Jillian.
A fantastic welcome. Thank you to you all for being here, of course. And thank you so much for your introduction. So it's important that we have a little trigger warning right now. We are going to, at this point in time, talk about domestic violence and menopause today. And we do understand that at some point, some people may have had some experiences in either of these issues. I would love for all of you to stand right now and applaud so that if some reason someone would like to leave, we don't notice so much. So please, everybody stand. So now I also feel fantastic. So thank you for that boost of energy for today. So what we saw a few weeks ago, right here in Australia, on the 16th of August, were the Matildas. The Matildas made history for Australia, and not in a way that you would think about it at all. What we saw were people with energy, with vibrance, with sportsmanship that you've never seen before. Who here was inspired by the Matildas? Yep. Yeah, I got two hands for them. They were fantastic. And what's so interestingly is that this is a place where we were screaming at the TV. Anyone here who's a TV screamer? Hands up, right? We're all screaming for the Matildas. So I would like you again to stand up if you watched that Matildas game right now. Let's do it. Stand up. And so I have to give it to the people who are online right now. There is not a single person sitting. She may be shy a little. Did you watch the Matildas?
No.
That's okay. There was only a small portion of Australia who didn't watch the Matildas, and it's okay if you didn't. We love you just the same as well. And I would like anyone who had never really watched a soccer match before just to remain seated. Anyone else who's a hardcore soccer fan can sit. Okay, so we have a good soccer love in this room. Thank you so much. Everyone else can sit again. Thank you so much for your input there. So look, we, the Australians, we watched our Matildas from far. We were far, we were wide, we were everywhere. Children, adults, grandmas, grandpas, everybody did it in their way. We enjoyed, we applauded, we felt every single second of the first match, where we had the greatest game of all time, the one that got most of us in the first time, this long, exhausting kick out at the end of the match. Honestly, the energy, the screams, the attention of the world were on our Tillies. Then our Tillies, of course. And of course, we are seeing 11.5 million Australians connected to our Tillies. This is the greatest ratings that have ever been since the ratings existed in 2001. This is the one time that our whole entire nation came together. We embraced our people. We came together, we saw camaraderie, we saw unification, we saw all colours, all genders, all ages, and full support for a sport which in its primacy has been a minority. But what did we not see? Did anyone notice the black armbands that the ladies were wearing during the match? Not me. I didn't see it on the day. All I saw was crazy, outstanding sports people. But the death of the father of Gore's partner wife, Clara, was real on the team's mind. Her wife lost her father. Her father-in-law had passed, but together, the team came together and stood around and played outstanding soccer. Arnold, we didn't even notice that she was unwell for this event and had been struck down by an illness during the Denmark match. what you may not have seen or even known is that Arnold had herself just recently suffered and heard that her hearing loss was so significant, she had to have hearing aids. What does this do for a person who has hearing challenges? That gives me hope. It gives us an opportunity to understand that even people with some differences can bring the best to the game. Hey, we all heard about Sam's calf injury. It was front page for the whole time. And what we didn't see is that Tamika, 10 years into her international career, she couldn't even tell people that she was in a same-sex marriage and relationship. She hadn't even come out. But now she wants to stand proud for other girls, to become a role model, to show everybody can be the best they can be and that there's nothing to be unashamed of here. Some of our players hadn't even, when they commenced their sport, had an only girls soccer team. There was no girls only soccer team. There was nobody to play against. This is what we didn't see. And we love them just the same. And we didn't just love them the same, we loved them more. And for me, this is a turning point for how we embrace diversity. In today's workplace, what we don't see is that some of our team players, they have things happening outside of work, things that are happening on your TV workplace right in front of your eyes, but we don't see. All around Australia, we are finding the risks and opportunities of a psychologically safe workplace. We are seeing that work can, statistically speaking, completely affect your bottom line if we don't provide a psychosocially safe workplace. And if you're looking for a sign about when to start creating a psychosocial workplace that is safe for you, this is where I give you just a little bit of an insight. So it's my job to translate to leaders. In my experience, most of the leaders are financial calculating people. I too am very calculating, and I talk in financial terms about non-financial risk. Now, the best way to translate this is in numbers. Human capital, in its true sense, exits are bad for clients and fellow workmates, and it's horrific for productivity. The Great Resignation is absolutely not great for business, and the replacement costs are absolutely extraordinary. Hiring costs 50K, onboarding 150, loss of productivity 200, and engagement of $400,000 for an average 200,000K role, which is your senior leader right in the peak of menopause exiting your workplace. This is the Australian Financial Review. Stats are real. This is the cost of replacement. Around Australia, psychosocial claims and mental health claims are absolutely significant. We have seen increases in the median costs of 280%. Median costs 55K. But I am talking to insurers, am I not? It's interesting because a lot of insurers are having quite a trouble in the psychosocial space. Mental health claims have impacted the Victorian space so badly that it had to get a $1 billion bailout by the state government. Victoria are not alone. In New South Wales, $1.9 billion bailout last year, with an additional $699 million allocated this year. Citing psychosocial, mental health and injury claims. Now we are seeing that sometimes some hidden costs are falling through for elements such as domestic violence, as well as exiting from the workplace potentially related to menopause. We are also seeing the regulators revolt. No offense if there's any regulators in the room, and also no offense to anyone with very cute red hair, but this is the fiercest I could find of a regulator. Recently, there's been an independent review into workplace culture at EY. No offense to EY, they're close around somewhere. But it says it's a lesson for all businesses that operate on professional services. This report is clear that the regulators are focusing on psychosocial. They are focusing on fatigue management and other elements around culturalism, around inclusion and diversity, and those impacts on the workplace. Okay, a terrible incident occurred to make this real, and a great lesson for us to learn and move forward from. So now we know it costs a lot for an unsafe workplace. So let's talk about a couple of really big elephants. Okay, again, we're going to talk about domestic violence and menopause, and we are losing far too many women from the workplace. It is a fact. They are at their peak quite often when this occurs, and it's time for us to understand some real tools, some opportunities, and how we as fellow workmates can provide some real solutions, how we can provide some insights, and how we might be able to reach out to a fellow workmate or staff member at this point in time. It's my absolute pleasure now to introduce Melanie Greblo. Melanie is the founder and CEO of Banksia Impact and Academy. Equally as ambitious and successful, Melanie's a 3-time founder whose driving purpose has been to catalyze and lead positive impact. She has honed the art of conversational leadership and is an ideas synthesist and strategist with the proven record of achievement in business, social ventures, community engagement, and cultural community engagement. Transformation with deep commitment to diversity, inclusion, and systematic social change. Hear from Mel how Banksia and Scribe are supporting women with lived experiences of domestic violence and to thrive at work and provide pathways for non-working survivors in a higher paid employment in the digital economy. So please, everyone, clap again for Mel.
Hello, everyone. Am I on? No? You're on. Is that better? Yeah. That better? Yeah. Okay. I want to start today by introducing you to Taylor Cox here in this photo. Taylor lost her life last month on the 9th of August. The little baby girl you see her holding in her arms is 11 weeks old, her firstborn child. She was also killed at the hands of this man here, who was Taylor's husband. Now, it's not my intention to stand here and just kind of throw you some statistics for shock value around how many women have died at the hands of their partners or former partners this year. But Taylor was the 30th woman killed in Australia this year by her partner. And it's important to kind of contextualise that for my conversation with you here today. Taylor was once a student of forensic science at a Queensland university. She was also a repair coordinator at a construction company in Rockhampton. Her husband was a 31-year-old TV accounts executive at Southern Cross Austereo. He was a regular guy. He doesn't exactly look like a killer, does he? He was not known to police prior to murdering his wife and baby, and there were no prior domestic violence offences. Yet Matthew Cox was charged with 2 counts of murder, domestic and family violence offences. The truth is, Taylor could be your sister, your daughter, your friend. Taylor could be a colleague here at work. 30 Australian women were killed between the 1st of January and the 11th of August this year in Australia. Taylor's death and every single one of these women that you can see on the screen are absolutely devastating. They're also preventable. These are the faces of those 30 women. And the ones that you can see that aren't actually a photo are Indigenous women, and we don't have permission to show their faces. For those tuning in around the world, 3 women in the USA die every day at the hands of their partners or former partners. In the UK, it's 1 every 3 days. And here in Australia, we're tracking alarmingly at still about 1 a week. What's going on below this iceberg's tip, though, is really, really important. And that's what I really want to share with you today. Probably a good point to start with, for those of you who don't understand it, what is domestic and family violence? It happens when one person in a relationship hurts another or makes them feel unsafe, and it's a repeated pattern of behaviour. It can involve behaviour that makes someone feel scared, involves threats to them, their children or their pets, and denies their choices. Domestic and family violence almost always is an ongoing, repeated pattern of behaviour, and we've come to know this, and you would have maybe read about it in the news or heard about it, as coercive control. There's some new laws being introduced in New South Wales next year that everyone's preparing for to criminalise coercive control, because we know also that it's a precursor to these terrible deaths. So it can take many forms: psychological, sexual, financial abuse is huge and invisible, spiritual, emotional. These are all forms that abuse can take. So just going back to the iceberg and what is below the surface of the water. Can I just get a quick show of hands in the room, or maybe a thumbs up in the chat? How many people here know someone who's experienced domestic abuse? Could you please keep your hand up, or give us 2 thumbs up in the chat if you've supported someone going through domestic and family violence? And keep your hand up still if that person that you've supported or known was from your workplace. It's a couple, yeah. Well, it's not surprising that so many people initially put their hands up. 2.2 million Australians have experienced intimate partner violence since the age of 15. 1 in 4 women have experienced domestic and family violence. 2 in 5 children are victims of domestic and family violence. And it costs our economy $26 billion every year. So why do I care about this? Well, there's a lot of my story that I'd like to share, but I can't, to protect my family. But I want to share with you some words that I wrote many years ago that kind of talked to this invisible face of how most people experience domestic abuse. It's incessant phone calls and text messages asking where she is, what she's doing and who she's with whilst she's at work. It's masked as care, but she comes to learn it's far from care. It's driving around with the children in the car, finding random car parks where she can park and call the police and wait when he can't find her. And it's the police finally taking out an ADVO when he follows her with their children to a work event and threatens and abuses her and her colleagues whilst holding their small child. My own lived experience had disastrous impacts on my work and hence my financial security. For example, I'd have a whole day of meetings planned. This is way pre-COVID when Zoom wasn't really a thing, in-person meetings. And what would happen on a weekly basis is my ex-partner would bring the children to my home unexpectedly, very early in the morning, and say, you've got to look after the children. So I'd cancel all the meetings or postpone them to be there to obviously care for my kids. No daycare arranged, no other family support around. So these are the kinds of things that might seem benign to the untrained eye, but once you start to understand the nature of coercive control, you can see that that's exactly what's going on here. And that could be what's happening to your colleagues and you cannot see it. So whilst I acknowledge that it was a blessing at the time that I ran my own business for the flexibility that it gave me, my business suffered enormously. And I thought that coming out of this in more recent years, I thought, well, if that was a challenge for me, how would, felt quite supported and, an educated woman, ran her own business, had great friends and family support. I couldn't help but think often, what on earth are all the women out there doing who don't have what I have in terms of support? And they must be drowning. And that's exactly what the data tells us. In a study of over 3,000 victim survivors, 2,500 of them reported their job was impacted by their experience of domestic and family violence. And the study found that of that 2,500, 1 in 2 said it impacted their career progression, 2 in 3 said it impacted their ability to concentrate at work, 2 in 5 said it impacted their productivity, and 1 in 3 said it changed their employment status. Now, they left work, were forced to leave work, or didn't progress careers, returned down promotions. "62% of victim survivors are employed. They're in our workplaces. An aggregate of data suggests that up to 20% of your workforce are people who have experienced domestic violence. Yet only 30% of those will disclose for a whole host of reasons. Some of them are more obvious than others. And usually they don't disclose to a manager or HR, they disclose to a colleague or a co-worker. And of the $605 million in lost productivity, 235 million of that is borne by employers. So it's a massive productivity cost to business. It matters to your bottom line, but it also matters to your employee experience. And we have a duty of care in our organisations to ensure these often invisible challenges that people are facing don't remain unnoticed. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how we can learn to bring this invisible beast into the light in our workplaces. So how we might recognise some of the ways that domestic abuse can show up. It's a complex experience, and many people, if you have known someone who's experienced domestic abuse, they don't even identify themselves as experiencing domestic abuse, even if others see that that's what it might be. So everyone's journey through it is very different. We can, however, build our literacy around how to better recognise it and respond if we think someone might be experiencing domestic abuse. I want to just take you through a few helpful things, hopefully, that might support you in your workplaces. Some signs that a co-worker might be being abused, and these are not exhaustive in any way. Neglecting or improving in any way the way they usually dress. So, the weather might be warming up and suddenly they're wearing clothes that cover them from top to toe. They could be covering bruises. Constantly checking their phone and seeming stressed and agitated around their phone. The phone, sadly, is a very common kind of channel for abuse to take place. Uncharacteristic lateness or frequent absences from work when they're usually punctual and show up. And changing working patterns and including their productivity, where they're usually great performers. When you do get to have that conversation with someone and they do make a disclosure to you, if that ever happens to you, there are some kind of really good things to remember, the big ticks. The first is to listen actively and without judgment or presumption. The second is to thank the person for trusting you. It's probably one of the hardest things they'll ever do in their life, is to tell you someone at work. Believe them and let them know that you believe them. Ask how you can help them and don't assume that you know how to help. And ask them why they chose to tell you, because then you may not be the best person, and the worst thing you can expect of someone is to keep retelling their story over and over to different people. So just check in with them around that. If the person that you're working with or in your workplace hasn't made a disclosure but you suspect they're experiencing domestic abuse, the best thing to do is find a private space, call a meeting, invite them to a cup of tea, but make sure it's private, not in the cafe downstairs, and start a conversation. And that conversation can start with, I've noticed that, and I'm concerned that. Don't presume anything, don't judge. Create a really warm and open space as safe as possible. If you need someone with you, that's fine. I think that there's a tendency to always bring backup to some of these workplace meetings, but it's probably not the best thing to do in this case. Reassure them, especially if you're their manager, that it's not a conversation about performance, it's about care, and invite them to share any concerns they have, but don't push them to talk before they're ready to. There's some definite don'ts of responding as well. Don't ask them why they haven't left or why they stayed so long. Some women choose to stay in violent relationships because it's an act of kind of quite active resistance because they're trying to protect their children. Don't tell them that they should leave. Don't make assumptions about their situation, and don't presume you know how they feel. Don't make judgments, even if you experience something similar yourself. Many of your workplaces, and I know certainly that Marsh has these in place, have many supports in place. Make it your business to find out what they are and how to point people towards them. Find as many communication channels as possible to reiterate to your people the supports that are available, and share domestic violence helplines and posters in physical and virtual spaces, so bathrooms and on your intranet, things like that. Then let the individual take the lead and really share any concerns that they have and what they think their problems are, rather than assuming you know what they are. Every organisation should have a domestic and family violence leave and policy around it. Most of you have an employee assistance program. They're not always great. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. The most important thing is we break down the stigma around this and normalise conversations about domestic abuse. So we sort of socialise this dark, festering thing that's usually in the private domain. There are also fantastic supports out in the community for both men and women. There's some on the screen at the moment, and the people that come into our academy have used all of them, and they're really fantastic. So I really recommend that you have those in somewhere that are easy to point people to. It's sort of important also to be clear on the role and responsibilities of both HR and people managers, and set boundaries. So whilst it's great to be compassionate, caring and signpost to certain things, you shouldn't really take on the role of counsellor or get too involved, I guess, and make sure you're constantly sort of, connecting people to expert help. Have a list of the support services in the area that are available to people experiencing domestic abuse. And just recognise also that if you do know co-workers who are supporting someone going through domestic abuse, they might need support too. So think about in your organisation how you can set that up. Really important study, and I have to say that there's a dearth of evidence in this space. Dr. Anne Summers is just starting to undertake another big research project around the impact of domestic abuse on employment. But otherwise it's few and far between, the research and evidence. But this insights paper was a very important study. So it took, and it basically showed us that despite the best intentions of workplaces, the leave policies, the employee assistance programs, women with lived experience are still not getting the supports they need, those tangible supports that they need in the workplace. Which is why I started Banksia Academy. And so we do two things. One is support women facing barriers to employment to return to work, and they might have been out of the workforce because of their experiences for years. And then we support women at work. We've created Australia's first virtual hub for women and people identifying as women who have an experience of domestic abuse. And that could be from a long while back. They don't have to be sort of actively in it. We co-designed everything in the hub with women with lived experience from all over the country, so that we know what's there and the supports that we're offering are exactly what women need. And so when women have access to those supports, the outcomes for women, for their work and their workplaces are exponentially more positive. Productivity goes up, absenteeism goes down, social isolation goes down for these people, connection goes up, and performance increases. We really focus on supporting women to thrive again in their lives by keeping their jobs and continuing to progress careers that otherwise can seriously derail. Organisations sign up, and similarly to an employee assistance program, the workplace pays per user, and we become partners in inclusion, and we support your employees with lived experience. Importantly, we've designed a way so that your employees can access our hub that anonymously to you, because this disclosure thing is a big barrier to women getting the support they need. We still can obviously deliver reports to management around usage and engagement and the impact that it's having on your people. Super excited this morning to launch our virtual hub to 500 employees at St Vincent de Paul Society in Victoria to their all-staff meeting. So they've come on board to offer access to the hub to their people, and now those employees will have access to the whole suite of supports available. It's everything from weekly coffee club, weekly mindfulness and meditation sessions, journaling, a lot of self-care space. Every fortnight we have a masterclass that's delivered by a subject matter expert from financial planning, family law experts, right through to wellbeing. The main benefits of the hub are that the anonymity, as I said, it's accessible, it's virtual, women can access it anywhere in their lunch breaks at home. It's a community as a service model. So what we can deliver is far more than one employer could deliver alone. And importantly, you can get a lot of those courses and learning elsewhere, but ours sits within a trauma-informed context, recognising the impacts of trauma on women. Creating a supportive culture for victim survivors in your workplace means they're more likely to stay employed and they're more likely to stay with you. For many women, this can be the difference between financial security that enables a home or being plunged into poverty or worse, homelessness. And I know that homelessness is an issue dear to Marsha's people. When workplaces prioritise the practical supports needed, you retain your great talent, you reduce employee turnover, and increase productivity. Together, we close the loop on an issue that's clearly everyone's business. You're empowered with a practical way to walk your gender equal talk and really keep your great talent and lift your ESG credentials as well. I really hope that today that I've been able to kind of showcase to you the real impact of domestic and family violence on your workplace, how we can recognise it, respond with compassion, and how we can introduce support systems to really support women to thrive again. When we see the scale of this epidemic, you start to see this compounding trauma. We have millions of Australians living with domestic abuse, experiencing domestic abuse. We have millions of children experiencing trauma who grow up into adults and carry the trauma with them. It's huge. We are in crisis mode and we're creating this tsunami of mental health and wellbeing challenges for the future. But hopefully you can also see by what I've shared with you today that we actually have an incredible opportunity to co-create change together, to intervene and create the kind of social landscape that we all want to see in 25 years. One where every person, despite their experiences, can thrive, both financially and socially, and that it's our business. Thanks so much.
So I am so grateful for your presentation, absolutely fantastic. And I have to say, I once met a lady who I just love really dearly. She's still a fantastic friend of mine, and I did meet her through work as a work colleague. Her parents didn't believe her that this was happening. So I have to say to you, always if someone takes that moment to tell you, you are honoured in their world and you can really make a difference. Thank you so much. A first question I have for you is, how do we open up this conversation with a colleague?
Yeah, it's a good question. And as I sort of alluded to before, it's a tricky one too. We're human beings at the end of the day, and you just got to lead with your heart sometimes. Forget the rule book and just nudge someone, come on, let's go and have a coffee. I'm a bit worried about you. And that might be the first time someone's ever heard that said to them. So they'll go and then just go gently, I think, and just go easy into the conversation. Obviously only take it as far as they're prepared to go.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to ask a question? I do have a question also here online. Please put your hand up. We can take a question from the field. Anyone? No, look, and I have this one question which we actually talked about as we were preparing our presentations. Banksia Academy being for women and those who identify as women, does it also cater to others? We know that women are usually victims of domestic violence, and the rates of family and domestic violence within the LGBTIQ community are also significant. Is this support available to others who do not identify as women? So I'm going to throw over to you for that answer, because we had such a great yarn about that today, a couple of days ago. Yeah.
Fully acknowledge that obviously this happens to everyone of all walks of life, all genders. And the reason that we're at the moment just focusing on support for women is because it does disproportionately impact women and children. So, and we also know that there are a whole lot of other kind of intersecting challenges that women have at work and in the workplace. So it's not to say that down the track we might open up a hub for men as well, but at the moment it's just women. And yes, LGBTQI communities, the same-sex relationships have quite significant sort of statistics around domestic and family violence too. And of course we know that First Nations women are 31 times more likely to be killed by a partner than non-Indigenous folks. So that's pretty alarming as well.
Yeah, thank you. Emma, there's a lovely person online who we will give the statistics to offline. Do you have the stats relating to men impacted by domestic violence? Unless you have it at hand, we will respond to you after this session. Also,
1 in 16.
1 in 16
in Australia.
Yeah, so your answer there is 1 in 16 impacted by domestic violence for men. And Ganesh has asked a question: what should be the next action if the affected person doesn't open up to you, but you know that they are going through crisis?
The only thing you can do is make sure that they know where to find support. You can't make them, use it or take people up on offers of support, but you can just consistently reinforce that it's there, and obviously without kind of, banging on their door every day, but just to let them know. And I think that's where your duty of care starts and finishes if that person doesn't want to talk.
Yeah. Absolutely. Everyone, please warm thank you. Thank you for your additional questions, and please thank you so much, Melanie. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all the questions on the Q&A, and thank you so much for everybody in Q&A. We have some outstanding people. Now, I have to tell you that right here is where is all your resources for Banksia inscribed. And if you scan this QR code, you can have access to the research paper that Melanie referenced during the session. And I do believe that the slides will be available later on and accessible, and the recording is there, so you can find this later on as well. So it is with my pleasure to also welcome 2 fantastic people to the floor. I have one person dialing in from, now let me just stop my share while I read it out, because I'm going to have a new person joining us from Greece. Yeah, I think she's in Greece. Just wait 1 second. I'm going to stop the share. And, oh yes, here she is, Miss Georgie. Please pray tell where you are right now.
Yes, I'm in Greece. We're just sailing around for another week.
Of course you are. I would need to sail after that rugby match this week, I tell you. I'd need to sail many 70s.
You have to pick up the hopes a little bit.
Thank you. So Georgie Drury is the CEO and co-founder of Metluma. Drury is a passionate advocate for gender equality and is a 2-time founder of tech-based health initiatives. through Georgie's current role as CEO of Metluma, we will hear how 50% of our workforce has the potential to be impacted from menopausal symptoms and how up to 26% of female workers will reduce hours or not put their hands up for promotions. Metluma provides companies and individuals with access to personalised services and solutions to address gender and age equity issues in the workplace born from menopause, with the cost of menopause on the healthcare sector reaching more than double that of mental health. It's time to focus on innovative ways to support women in the workforce during this inevitable transition. I also welcome Dr. Nicole Lavard, who will join us, co-founder of Metluma. Dr. Nicole is a principal general practitioner of the Next Practice Arena Avard. Avard brings a desire to inspire and innovate. Her 18 years of owning and operating general practice clinics as an integrative GP has helped her to develop a wealth of experience in understanding the patient journey and meeting people where they are at. She has travelled this journey with thousands of women. She blends her private practice with work in GP and education and training future general practitioners, and as being a clinical adjunct with the National Institute of Complementary Medicine with multiple published papers. Nicole is also a member of the Australian Menopause Society. Please, I welcome you to the stage, and Georgie, I'm going to flick back to your slides and then we'll bring you back for your questions. So, but you will still see Georgie out of the corner, I'm hoping, I have been told. So here is your clicker. And please, any questions, just throw them in the chat box and we will get to them. Thank you. The Q&A.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to click the clicker to make sure that I'm going to go forward and backwards in the right order. So we have a little problem with our clicker. Oh, it's not working? Yeah, it's not going. Let's try. Oh. Just do it, yeah. Arrows, yeah.
Leave it to the tech professional.
Thanks, Jillian, for the wonderful introduction, and thank you to our hosts for letting Georgie and I present to you today. We're very appreciative of the opportunity. Thank you, Melanie, for a very heartfelt and wonderful talk. I really appreciate the commonalities that we're seeing between domestic violence and menopause, in that there is a dearth of research for women in the workforce and how menopause is affecting them. We're here to help you try and normalise and destigmatise menopause, to try and start conversations with kind hearts and with compassion, and to hopefully help you understand and spread some accurate information of how menopause is impacting women in the workplace. So Georgie and I are co-founders of Metluma. The first place to start is what is menopause. So the last statistic I read was about 3 million women in Australia will be experiencing menopause at any point in time. About 20% of those women will have minimal or no symptoms. About 60% of women will have mild to moderate symptoms, and about 20% of women will really suffer and have severe symptoms. So at any point in time in Australia, there's between 1 and 2 million women that are experiencing moderate to severe symptoms of menopause. So there's a little bit of, can be a little bit of confusion around what menopause is. So menopause is actually a clinical diagnosis. It's 12 months after a woman's last period that a woman is then menopausal. So we don't know until 12 months afterwards, and sometimes you can get to 11 months and then the cycle shows up again and the 12 months count starts again. Having said that, there is a period of what's called the perimenopausal period, which can be quite turbulent and traumatic for women. And that can start 4 to 7 years prior to the actual diagnosis of menopause. The average age in Australia for the diagnosis of menopause is 51. So any woman from kind of in their early 40s, certainly into their mid 50s, can be experiencing a whole range of symptoms, which I'll come to in a minute. And the reason for that change is that the ovarian function starts to change. So the frequency of which ovulation happens starts to vary. And then there is this kind of hormonal fluctuation that can cause a cascade of symptoms ranging from physical, emotional, and a whole range of other symptoms. So it is important to understand that the menopause transition can be around 4 to 7 years, but the actual diagnosis of menopause is just a day in your life when your period stops. So what are the symptoms that we're talking about? In terms of symptoms, I like to categorize them into 3 broad areas. And it's great that we're talking about what's not seen, because a lot of them are not seen. So the first ones are physical. Most of them we would know. So hot flushing, sleep disturbance, changes in the menstrual cycle. And certainly when it comes to menopause, the definition of menopause from a cyclical point of view is a change in the period of more than 7 days of consecutive cycles. And you can imagine coming to a workplace and not knowing when your cycle's about to show up can in some circumstances be quite tricky. The other symptoms that fall into the psychological symptoms are also reasonably well known, but can be quite debilitating. So anxiety, depression, irritability, rage in some circumstances, suicidal ideation, and the incidence of suicide in menopausal women is not a pretty statistic, unfortunately. And there's the kind of unspoken things or spoken things that can impact on the workplace, like brain fog or difficulty concentrating, or, you know, what for someone who is a very verbal person, they can have difficulty word finding and articulating conversations. And that can really impact self-esteem and their impact and their performance in the workplace. And then to dive into the things that we often don't speak about is the genitourinary symptoms. So loss of libido, changes in sexual relationships, vaginal dryness, recurrent UTIs, stress incontinence and urge incontinence, and the need to run to the toilet very frequently. So there's a whole gamut of symptoms to be aware of that will impact women in the workplace. So why should we care about it? We should care about it because of the 1 to 2 million women that I spoke about. These are the statistics that's impacting them. 50% of them say that menopause is impacting them in the workplace. 40% of them take more sick leave. 26% of them say that they will reduce their hours or not put their hand up for a promotion. And most disturbingly, 10% of women actually leave the workplace because of menopausal symptoms. So in our room, in our workplaces, the impact is quite significant. And I liked how Jillian and Mel spoke to numbers. So here's the numbers right here. So as a result of women leaving the workforce, the cost to rehire, which Jillian aptly pointed out, the cost of sick leave, the cost to replace someone and onboard and train them up. The latest statistic in Australia is $1.2 billion. So it's not worth sneezing at, that's for sure. And we're talking about a demographic where women are the fastest growing in the workforce. And so the impact of menopause and the fact that they're not taking on these roles and responsibilities is happening at a time where they're most productive and most experienced in their career journey. So you can see this graph here from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. You can see the blue line is men, so that you can't quite see them, possibly can't quite see the bottom, but where it starts to dip off is the women aged 40 to 45. So you can see men here taking on leadership and management roles continues to climb, continues to increase after 45, and women here, it declines as the statistics showed in the last slide. So we've asked women and we've spoken to women, and what do I see women say when they come in to speak to me? These are the comments, you know, that the brain fog makes it difficult to focus at work. They've climbed up their career ladder and achieving where they want to be, and then all of a sudden they don't want to do it anymore because it's just really too hard. And they're on an emotional roller coaster because of varying hormones that makes their work performance really tricky. Thank you to Jillian and to Mel for the trigger warnings on mental health. As I said, the incidence of suicide and depression in menopausal women is quite frightening. And I just implore that if anyone is in the room that is suffering or knows someone who's suffering, please seek adequate help from your local general practitioner. There are also resources through Lifeline and Beyond Blue. And we feel that this impact of suicide in women is probably because of some menopausal changes. So let's see what the care pathways look like today. Let's meet Sally. Sally's 47 years old. She's working full time. She doesn't really have time to pop out to the GP. She's experiencing hot flushes and anxiety and difficulty sleeping. And she's like, is this menopause? So she Googles and she finds a wealth of information, and she's finding it very confusing to know where the accurate information lies. So Sally takes time out of her day to go to her general practitioner to see if her symptoms are in fact menopause. She goes to the general practitioner, and GPs in this day and age are working in a system that doesn't allow for a patient-centred holistic approach for all the gamut of symptoms that come with menopause, both for the woman and their family and the impact on their workplace. So the GP does what they can, but in some circumstances can often end up prescribing medications that are not quite right for the circumstance. Sally leaves disillusioned and a little bit more confused. She goes back to Google, and the loop is never really closed on kind of Sally having an accurate assessment and seeking out and able to source accurate information and an appropriate care pathway. So what do women want? Well, we've asked them that too. They want to talk about it. They want to start conversations around the 3 categories of symptoms. They want options that are based in evidence and science. They want to know that there are options on the table as opposed to just a pill. And they want expert help. So they want to know that the person they are talking to is a trusted source of information. So that's where we come in, and I'm going to hand over to Georgie now to take us through the team and what we've developed at Metaluma to help the women on their journey.
Thanks, Nick. We know that we can't do it alone, and together we need a really comprehensive team from all walks of life that are looking at all different aspects of menopause. So we partner with men and women and lived experience and experts that are all looking to help unpack those 27 symptoms. And we do it based in research and science. As you can see, we're working with Western Sydney University to validate our methodology, and also Sydney University to help with our algorithms to ensure that we're delivering a high touch and a high tech model, which is a new innovative model of care. So Mike, go to the next slide. And so this is where we're really excited. So based on the research that we've done, both of ourselves and that has been published, we've come up with 3 approaches. The first thing is to really uplift information through expert information. And so we're really excited to be that trusted source of information, because we know that women are really struggling about where to go to find that. The second thing is the health coaching. So not only do we really want to listen to women, as you know, Nick has spoken about, but we're really finding the group coaching is very, very significant in helping to women understand and have that safe place. And you can actually watch these women's shoulders just sort of drop and just go, you're experiencing it too. And they're really trying to really come together and have that opportunity to be in that group and that safe space, and to really understand that they're not alone. And then finally, we really are providing that access 24/7 to support. So think of it as, you know, having Dr. Nick on your shoulder. She's your guardian angel that you can access 24/7. And so we know that that digital intervention aligned with coaching is exactly what women want to really help them develop to, you know, solve for their menopausal symptoms. Go to the next slide. Thanks, Nick. So I really think this is the opportunity of what we can do today. We want something that's tangible, that we can take away from today's, webinar / masterclass. And it's really looking at starting the conversations. We've heard that we need to start, the conversations in regards to domestic violence. We also need to help to understand the conversations for menopausal women, both as an employer, a co-worker, a family member. The other piece is to really seek out that accurate information. So we really don't want to, go to the Google and just trust whatever comes up first. And Nick, I really might refer back to you as to have a look at what that information is and where to go for that. And then finally, let's book appointments with GPs. We can see that a lot of women are getting misdiagnosed and being prescribed SSRIs. So that because of the psychological presentation of issues. So we're really wanting to go back to GPs and make sure that we're going to menopausal GPs and GPs that are experts in that area. So Nick, I'll pass back to you and then you can close out how to really have those conversations.
Thanks, Georgie, for chiming in from Greece. I think Mel summed it up really well, actually. Start the conversation with an open heart. And be kind and compassionate. There's some tips here on how to have those conversations. Mel's example was a great one. Hey, I've noticed you might be struggling. Can we have a quick chat about that? If it feels a little bit more awkward, then you can go to the symptoms like, oh, hey, I've been reading a little bit about menopause and how that's impacting women. I've noticed that there's both physical and psychological symptoms. What's your experience of menopause for women in this workplace? And you can also go to the statistics as well and open a conversation that way. But I think leading with the heart is a good one if you feel comfortable enough to do that. I'm not going to read from the slide. The slide is there to guide you on how to start those conversations. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If everyone can give a hand here, I've got a question. Is, of course, you can scan this QR code. There is such limited research and understanding of this real thing that's been happening since the beginning of time. You wouldn't believe it. Women have a life cycle that changes the end of their time. So to me, I find it absolutely wild that we haven't had university studies, true concrete studies before. And this is a worldwide first that you are hearing about right here. No other country is currently having these kinds of tools and solutions being proposed. So this is so innovative right now. So later on, if you can't scan that right now, you'll be able to grab it to speak with us. Now, we have some questions. I just need to check on the Q&A box. So first of all, someone's saying, please can I have a copy of the slides? Of course, not a problem at all. And so actually, I just want to also make it so I can see Georgie, because Georgie's got some good answers, I'm sure of it, who also has been key, vital to get us to this time and to this day. Why will this process help with my symptoms and menopause management when my GP seems to have no idea? And that's a fact. We have people who are not specialists in this area, right?
Yeah, 100%. So, and that's no slander to GPs. General practice is a big wide world, and unless you and menopause is a very fast moving, like any special interest is a fast moving area. And if you choose to take a special interest in something else, then that's great. But not all GPs are keeping up with what's happening in menopause, particularly in the world of menopause hormone replacement therapy, which is, that landscape has changed a lot in the last 10 years. This process will help the person asking the question, I hope, because it's a three-pronged approach. So the way in which I approach any patient is to ensure that they have accurate information so that they can be empowered to make their own choices. So that's step number one. And we feel really confident that we can deliver that for you. Step number 2 is, once you're armed with that information, is to feel like you can make your choices, yet have your guardian angel there to guide you with whatever it is that needs to happen, whether that's a medical question or a nurse-led coaching question. Menopause requires a holistic approach. So it's not just about taking a tablet, even though menopause hormonal replacement therapy is definitely one of the best options for treating symptoms in menopause. It comes with required support around sleep and mood and movement and food and alcohol and interactions with relationships and sexual relationships. So this approach works because we can arm you with accurate information and then guide you along the journey according to what's coming up at any point in time for a really holistic approach. And then if prescriptive medication is required, we can help you access that too.
Okay, fantastic information. Thank you so much, Doctor. Georgie, I've got a question. How does an employer get involved in this kind of process? How can they assist?
Well, definitely start a conversation with us, but primarily what we're hearing from CEOs and HR is that they have these incredible diversity and inclusion programs. However, females' bodies are letting them down. And so it's not the fact that these organizations don't want to have the women in senior leadership, in management roles. But the fact is that, you know, I've had one CEO ask me, but where are the women? And the fact is that we know that as per the stats, 26% of women are saying, hey, I can't do this anymore. So if we can help to unpack something that's happening to 100% of women and provide that support, I think that's a really great first start.
Absolutely. And for me, one of the most glaring statistics is that your senior leadership who are women, this is the time that they are, that age that they become a senior leader, this is the time that you could lose the most amount of information and knowledge and, you know, your greatest governance professional, your greatest risk advisor, your greatest senior leader. And for me, knowing what it costs to replace people and knowing that you can't replace some people like ever, you know, just the opportunity to be able to extend a working life of an individual rather than losing them to something that has been happening for so long. I think this is such an amazing opportunity. Yeah, thank you so much. Any more questions? Oh, I have a little note question here. Oh, okay. Do you think, let me just firstly check this. Oh no, it's good. It's anonymous. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Do you think the reason women don't get promoted is because women have more moving parts that is debilitating? That's, you know, it's a tough one. So we also have another question here.
I think the comment I would make to that is,
yeah,
there's possibly an element of self-selection because women are suffering. So I can't speak to the workforce because that's not my lane, but yeah, women are suffering.
Yeah, look, and I think especially with such limited information, you know, it makes it very difficult. And to one of the colleagues online here, they've asked, could we please get a copy of this recording, because they would love to distribute it to their workforce and to be able to increase that knowledge that is so limited and available. And again, thank you everyone, and please a warm thank you to our presenters. Thank you. Okay, so it's my honour now to pass over to Dr. Michael Neary, the Managing Director of Insurance, Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa for DX Technology. Thank you so much for our wrap.
Thank you.
Okay, so what shall I do? Come on over.
We can leave Georgie up.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Georgie. Good to see you again. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming along. We've been doing this for 8 years, and a lot of times it's what's obvious. And I think this year's been different. And thank you for sharing what's hidden in the workplace. And it's very important for all of us, I think, because Dive In is about diversity and inclusion. And if we're going to be inclusive, we need to be sensitive to others. So if we could just again, thanks Jillian, Melanie, Georgie, and Nicole for some. I think we heard some really good innovative solutions from banks here, and I really appreciate the sharing of that. It's something that certainly affects both women and men, and it's something really important that we all think about. Metaluma, again, thank you for sharing. I think both of these sort of show us that it's very important in our workplace if we want to get the most out of people to be very compassionate and look. And I think that advice of taking it from the heart, we can put all the numbers up there, it makes business sense, yes, but I think we've got to look at ethics and also just what the right thing to do is for these topics, some of which can be pretty difficult. And so it's all about challenging our thoughts. And I think the thing is to make sure that we take something from today. Last year, we talked about neurodiversity. I felt pretty guilty that we hadn't done much for that. And DeepSeek's now embraced that. And we've got 4 people on the spectrum doing a lot of work with us in Victoria. And then from today, I'd challenge us all and challenge myself as well. What can I do about people that have menopause that we're working with or domestic violence, and how can you be attuned and inclusive in the workplace? That really brings us to an end. I'd like to thank the people at AIG, Marsh and DeepSeek. Maybe if you could stand up if you're involved in preparing for today, because I know a number of you put in a lot of time, and maybe if we could thank them, because I know months of work and voluntary. So really good to see people giving their time every year, for many years working on this. That really brings it to a conclusion. So for those online, I think we get to say goodbye. Thank you for joining us today. For those